Many of us are never truly on because we're never truly off. I know I've been guilty of waking up in the middle of the night thinking about work problems. I've also found that by leaving work and going for a run or going for a walk, whatever it is that you do to recharge and unwind, I actually end up bringing more creativity and energy with me back to the problem because it's still waiting for me. But actually shutting my brain off or shutting my work brain off for a good bit of time actually helps me solve problems faster than just continuing to grind on them when I'm at that point of diminishing returns.
Welcome to the Make Work Not Suck podcast.
All right, Daniel, in this episode, we have Maria here with us, Director of Operations for Oracle. She happens to be in town from Spain as we're working on some projects together. So guest this week is Maria.
Thanks.
Can't wait. So one of the topics that I proposed today was the idea of work sucks when it's too important to you or when it's not important enough. And so this idea of work has to be meaningful, but in that right kind of window for work to not suck. I've got some current personal experiences, professional experiences that kind of triggered that thought, but that was my proposed topic for the day. Reactions.
How do you feel about this topic?
I feel like it's an interesting thing that has to be discussed a little bit more because I believe that the truth must be somewhere in the middle, as probably is what you're going to tell us the story, Daniel. But there's like different things that could happen when you're too involved in your work. I personally, from experience, cannot say what happens when you're not too interested in your work because I've never had this in my life. I've always kind of went into being more into it than not doing enough. But I have experiences from the surroundings of me when I can see what happens when you're not that interested in what you're doing on your day-to-day life.
For today, I want to talk about an idea and I want to get your reactions to this because I think it's true, but I'm not 100% convinced. I think work can suck if it is either too important to you or not important enough. And that in order for work to not suck, you've got to find that right balance of important, but not too important.
Okay, I like where this is going. I feel like there's a story here, maybe a scenario. Maybe tee us up a little bit more with a story here.
So I got a couple of stories. I'll pick one from a couple of years ago. I was doing some executive coaching work with a Chick-fil-A operator, and I was using this assessment tool that I really like to use, and it indicated that his job was too important to him. He had a lot of his identity wrapped up in the fact that he was a Chick-fil-A operator. And I was like, well, we probably need to talk about this. This is not a great thing. And he's like, why is this not a great thing? Chick-fil-A is awesome. I make a ton of money. Everyone in the community loves me. The chicken sandwiches are great. How could this be a problem? And I said, all of those things are true. But if you ever retire, if something happens and Chick-fil-A goes out of business or you do something stupid and you get fired, you're going to be on suicide watch. Because you don't know who you are if you're not a Chick-fil-A owner operator. And that's not a problem today, but at some point that becomes a very big problem for you. And so his work was too important to him. And so we had to spend some time helping him develop a life outside of work because he didn't have one. And again, not a near-term crisis, but something that over the coming years was going to cause a massive problem for him. But I think it's tricky because his day-to-day experience wasn't that work sucked until it does, right? It's not a problem until it's a massive problem. So that would be one story on the work's too important to you. We'll go to the other one in a second. How about you? Or Maria? Welcome, Maria. So glad you're here.
Thank you.
Where have you seen other examples of work being too important to people?
I can give a personal example on this one because I feel like at this moment, I've kind of found this balance for myself where work is meaningful and important and exciting for me, but work is not all I do. I have my hobbies, I have my interests, I have other things and passions that are inspiring me and getting me excited to wake up in the morning. But I've had periods of my life where I didn't have all of those things and work was basically the only thing that I've been doing, and I was very much involved in it. And as you said, this example, my personality was wrapped around it. And then something happened, which I don't want to go into that story today because it's going to be too long for this podcast, where my world, the way that I knew it, kind of like crumbled around me. I just remember the situation of finding myself on the kitchen table at night and like crying over what am I going to do now? And what is happening, what is going to be next for me, which actually only positive things happened after that. But it was kind of a breaking point for me where up until this moment, everything was wrapped around this bubble that I created for myself. And then the bubble popped and I had to basically take myself out of it and figure out what am I going to do next, which then I started to incorporate more things into my life that are not related to that. I don't know what burnout is. I mean, I know what burnout is, and I think this is what I've experienced in this point.
Yes. I find this happens with a lot of professionals. And what I mean by that is people like doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, CEOs. If you've had a title like that, a title that's kind of a big deal, it is very hard to separate who you are from that title. Then when your company goes upside down or goes out of business, or maybe your company gets bought and you're no longer the CEO, or you just retire and people don't call you doctor anymore, or people don't call you back anymore because you're not the CEO. That becomes this moment where people start to have this existential identity crisis of who am I if I'm not a doctor? Who am I if I'm not the CEO? Do I even have value? And I think that there's a lot of risk for those of us that tend to like work, might work too much, not developing the other parts of our person and developing those outside interests. There just is a lot of risk that you've got way too much weight on your work. And as long as it holds it, it holds it. But the moment it doesn't, it comes crashing down.
I mean, I think that sounds all fine and dandy, but I think the reality is most people don't realize they're caught in that trap, right? Like it's easy for us to criticize that or to say that, but it's like, yeah, but how do I know if I'm that person? And so, I think the big one is like, if you're an executive or a leader or a founder, especially if you're a founder and you started the company, your identity is definitely entrenched in that. And that's where a lot of leaders have problems when they sell or they bring in an investor, right? That's kind of part of the story. And if you're part of a peer group or something like that, like people are going to tell you that. I think it's actually more dangerous at the manager level or the team member level. When you're a manager and your friends, I'm going to air quote friends here, are your direct reports, that is a very unhealthy relationship. And that is where your identity is tied into. And then when you have to make a strategic decision, the business changes direction or you have a performance problem, you have to fire one of your friends, you made too much of the wrong connection. And that's where work becomes too important to your social life. And then as a team member, right, the same thing is, I've had people that work for me like this and they're just so good and they love serving and they love helping others that it's at the detriment of their own health or their own well-being or their own community, friendships, family, etc., because they love the work so much and they're so bought into what they're doing that they literally run themselves in the ground.
I think that's an interesting idea that I hadn't considered, is that as a leader, how are you making sure that your people are not over invested in their work? Right? Most of us spend all of our time trying to get employees to care about work. And we'll talk about that in a second, right? Because that's the other ditch that you can fall into, is that work's not important enough to you. And that's probably where most of us spend our time, is helping people find their passion and find work that they're excited about doing. But I guess it's a new thought to me to think of, okay, if you're only here at work, you don't have any hobbies, you don't seem to have a personal life, you don't seem to have friends outside of work, that's actually a risky position for me as your manager, because if you don't have good things outside of work, you're not going to be a healthy person in the long run. You're not going to bring the best that you have to contribute because you're over-indexed on work.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's getting even, I don't know, I think there's varying degrees of worse and not worse. And that's probably a horrible statement to say. As we become more of an online community, especially people working remotely, your social emotional connections become the people you work with and less the real world. And you start going out to the real world and just trying to get in and out of the store. I think on the other hand, I think a lot of the younger generations are becoming very social where they do blend a lot of that together. But I still think then they're more connected to the work or the connection. And, this is an interesting turn on it. When you're more connected to the people there than the mission, then work will actually start to suck, because if you're not bought into the mission, but you have to get the work done because that's where your friends are, that's also a way to get where work sucks.
Yeah, that's a bad situation. All right, so we've talked about some of the signs. I'd love to wrap that part up. What are some signs that work is too important to you? You don't have any friends outside of the office. You don't have any hobbies outside of the office. FOMO.
I think if there's something and you don't feel like you're in the middle of the know of everything going on at the company and you're unable to disconnect because you got to know every little detail that's going on because you feel like you're going to be missing out, I think that's a huge sign.
Yeah.
And it may feel like you feel like you're adding value, or it's an important thing to you. But the real question is what are you shortcutting? Or what's the whole saying? You work to live, not live to work.
Mm-hmm.
When your life revolves around working and fear of missing out of being part of it, that's a sign of it not going well.
A sign could be part of the fear of missing out is if you're checking your email or Slack notifications in the middle of the night when you're not supposed to do that, and then your brain starts working, and instead of sleeping or doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're still thinking about work. When you're not really truly off, that's when it gets unhealthy.
Sounds like some experience there.
It does. It's come from
That
experience.
may have been a little bit of a conversation the other day.
Yes.
Just maybe.
But there has been some rules set around it, and I've been able to overcome that. So that's been good.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes, and I can't remember where it comes from. I should probably look this up, but I think it's very powerful. The guy said, many of us are never truly on because we're never truly off. I know I've been guilty of waking up in the middle of the night thinking about work problems, but I've also found that by leaving work and going for a run or going for a walk or, whatever it is that you do to recharge and unwind, I actually end up bringing more creativity and energy with me back to the problem because it's still waiting for me, but actually shutting my brain off or shutting my work brain off for a good bit of time actually helps me solve problems faster than just continuing to grind on them when I'm at that point of diminishing returns.
Well, and what's crazy is everybody's going to go through that. You're always going to have a project or a deadline or something, and you're going to have that night. Like if you had it once or twice, you're not what we're talking about. It's when it's every night for weeks, months on end, and you're not able to disconnect. And I think Tom just brought up a good point here. What if this is coming from my fear I'm going to be fired? If I don't get this work done, if I don't stay on top of this, then I'm going to be fired. I can't afford to be fired. So then your work identity is tied up into making sure your boss is happy.
That's a tough spot to be in.
But is that really the case though? Is your boss ever really thinking, if this person doesn't do anything but work for me and think about my work and how to achieve my goals in this company, I'm going to fire them? Or is that something that we fabricate in our heads due to overthinking, due to this fear of missing out, due to this making work too important for you?
I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think your case is more what it is. I think there's a few scenarios where there is a boss that's on a power trip. And at that point, leave your job. Don't stay in that toxic environment. But if you're creating this in your head that your boss is going to fire you, I guarantee you, if you go talk to your boss and say, this is what I'm feeling and help me overcome this. If they're a good manager, they're going to tell you, you should take a day off. The work will be fine. We'll get through this. No, that's not what I really want. And I'm willing to bet they'll probably change their approach because they probably didn't realize they're doing something to put you in that situation if they're a good boss. If they turn around and come back and say no, I want you to work harder. You're not working hard enough. Go find a new job. Plain and simple. I mean, I know that's easier said than done, but I think that's the reality check you'd have to have with yourself is, what is it? What's the phrase? Everybody has the right to be well led. And if you're not being well led by your manager or your leader, then it is your freedom to go find a better leader.
I like that. All right, so let's talk about the other end of the continuum, which I think is going to be harder for all three of us because I don't think this is naturally our struggle. If work is not important enough, or maybe to reframe it, like if what you're doing is just not something you were interested in, you're passionate about, it isn't a good fit for your skills and gifts, talents, and interests. I mean, that's kind of the definition of a crappy job, is something that you're not interested in. What advice would you have for somebody who's stuck on the other side of this continuum?
So I think there's a couple of things. Sometimes life just throws you a curveball, right? life sucks. It just does. It gets all of us. And sometimes you just have to take a shitty job and just work it. I think you can do two things. You can accept reality and suck it up and do that job and figure out what you need to do to get out of that situation. I think people get themselves in those situations and then they use that as it's the analogy you use. They build a box, they jump in it, and then they complain that they're
about the box.
It's like put yourself in that box. Now, maybe life put you in that box. We can get behind that, but don't keep yourself in the box. Find ways to get out of it. And so I think there's that component of it where, again, you're just put in that situation. And I've seen that at managers, leaders, employees. I mean, I've seen executives that have been forced to take jobs to put food on the table for a role that they really don't find passion in. And that does suck. But I think that's where you do have to spend the time to move your way out of it. I think the other one is when you started in a job and maybe the job has gotten complacent, or maybe what you were hired for, the dynamics changed, or maybe you've mastered the rebuild of the department and now you're kind of in the SOP phase. You're a builder and you're not a maintainer and you're stuck in a maintaining role. Well, then at that point, you're going to be disengaged and be disconnected. You want to build and you're stuck in a maintainer role. So I'll let you, what do you do in that situation? Or well, you answer that one.
I actually have an interesting story from my surroundings that gives slightly different perspective from what you're saying, because here we assume that that your job is not interesting and you have taken it maybe as a building step towards your career, or maybe out of options and in the look of something better that you can do. But I live in Spain, and Spanish people, I really don't want to generalize for the whole nation, but in general, they are the absolute truth of the saying, we work so we can live. In Spain, it's actually sort of rude or not showing good manners to ask someone what they do for a living or to talk about their job when you're outside, because they don't do work so they can progress and they can build their careers. Yes, some people are very passionate about that. I'm not saying this isn't 100% of the people, but in general, people don't talk about work outside. Their life is not at all, their meaning for their life does not come from their work at all. So this is just a small piece of their day, which is 1/3 of their life, that in most cases they hate doing. They don't like their jobs. They don't find any meaning of them, but they have so many other passions and interests and hobbies and things that can do outside of their life. They focus a lot on the community, but their work is 1/3 of their life and they don't really like doing that. They don't really like talking about that. They don't really focus on any of their goals. So what this results in is, yes, you have all of these other things that you can do, but 1/3 of your life you actually want to repress and don't talk about and ignore.
That's interesting. And I wonder how much that is just a legacy culture versus the younger generation. And it's probably, I'm going to make an assumption and say it may be evolving a little bit, but still predominantly there. But that's interesting is basically it sounded like you said, they just suck it up and do the work. They punch in, they punch out, and then they go enjoy life.
Yes.
And they just compartmentalize it so much and it sucks. Well, why does it have to be that way? Why can't you enjoy the job?
There's probably some things that Americans could learn from that, because there's a lot of us that I think work is too important to us. And I'm probably guilty of that. I would also agree with the fact that I'm not willing to concede the reality or the assumption that work has to suck. Like I want to fight that and say I don't think that has to be true. Sometimes it's true. We've all had to take jobs that we just need the paycheck, right? And you do what you have to do. Or to Maria's point, you take a transitional job to get to the job you really want. I've known people who are just kind of on a career journey. Like if you need an advanced degree, a master's degree, a PhD to get into the field you really want, you're probably not going to be paid very well along that journey, right? So you're waiting tables, you're working security somewhere, right? You're doing some sort of a mindless job to pay the bills so that you can focus your passion on the thing that you're really excited about. But I think those are seasons. That's not really a strategy.
Agree. And I want to take this a slightly different direction here. I read an article the other day, and I think it was like a Swedish or Norwegian. It was one of those places where like happiest place on earth to live, very all about life and not much work. And it was this guy, billionaire business guy. And he's like, I'm investing in America. He's like, because they hustle. He says, there's so much more. And I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing of what he used, but it was like the desire to get work done was much higher than any other country in the world. And he's like, I'm investing in America because they're going to outpace the rest of the world. And it wasn't that we work harder. It's we have the desire to do more meaningful work. He was like, I'm not investing in my own country because they don't have a desire to do work. They have to, almost like what Maria said in Spain. Whereas it sounds like it's more in our DNA to hustle, but hustle for purpose or hustle for something more meaningful. But I think that's also the crux of what we've been talking about is if it's in our DNA to hustle and drive that, but you're working at a, whether it's a small business or an enterprise, if you have that in your MO, then you're working too hard for, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but again, that goes back to too much identity tied up into it. So I think that's actually, it's more of an American thing. And I think it's both a strength and a weakness. And I think that's where we can definitely bring balance back into the equation.
I would say perhaps unlike the other end of the continuum where you're in the hustle and the grind and not realizing that work is too important to you. My suspicion is that when work's not important to you, it's pretty obvious. You hate it. You're trying to minimize it as best you can. You clock in, you clock out, and you just try to get through as best you can. What advice would you have to those individuals? And maybe let's take a split. What if we have first advice to Americans who probably work too much, and then maybe we could give advice to people who don't have maybe that same cultural context?
I actually think it's the same for both.
Okay.
But I think if we let's pull the Simplify method into this, right? I think it's just a different continuum on the wheel. Is maybe Spanish value more culture and journey, whereas Americans are more culture and results.
Yeah, maybe culture and results. I was going to go more vision results than culture results.
Well, but this goes back into, I think either one, because if they're culture results, if I'm going to work or because my colleagues are my friends, that's culture. If I'm going to work because I'm the manager and my direct reports that's culture.
Yeah.
And so, I'm driven to make results and I'm my culture connection, right? So that's actually a lack of vision.
Right. I'm there for the people. I'm not there for the purpose.
Right. So I actually think the problem's the same one. We're just on opposite ends of the wheel. So I would go back and say, like, what's your vision for work? Like, I was interviewing someone a few years ago and they love playing guitar. And they basically they're kind of the one that the work didn't really suck, but they really showed up to do work, but they really wanted to play the guitar. And I asked the guy, like, why are you here? Well, I just need money because I want to buy guitars and play guitars. It's like, but what's your passion? It's like, well, I want to write music and I want to be a guitar teacher and I want to do these things. And what you're getting paid, why don't you go work at a guitar store? Like isn't that better serving? It's just one of those, like, what's the vision for this job? And his vision was only the result of the paycheck to go do the journey and culture outside of that. And it's like, well, why don't you blend the two of those together? If the vision here is I want to get paid and I want to play, I want to do it in a passion, cool. Maybe we should find a guitar school, guitar lessons school, etc. And there we got a vision. What's our path? Okay, let's find a place that can do that. Culturally, I'm going to be more connected with what I resonate with. And the result is I'm actually having a job that I'm engaged in. It's my passion and I get paid doing it. Now,
right. And even if you make less, you're probably still happier, even if it's slightly less money.
Well,
because the rest of the pieces are falling in place.
Right. And what's been going around for years on the American side, at least, right? I hate to say this, there's the stigma, if we give everybody a good purpose, then we don't have to pay top dollar. Now it's a little bit slanted. It actually comes down to people will take a reduced pay or they'll switch from one job to another, a higher paying job to a less paying job, if it has more meaning. But
I've seen people trade every one of those because I've also seen them say, there's no purpose here and we might stab you in the back, but you're going to make a lot of money.
Well, again, what's your vision? If your vision is to stockpile as much cash as possible, then that may be the job for you.
Right.
If that journey works and gets you to your destination, then that is the role for you. But I'm going to guess you may be lying, cheating, and stealing in order to get the sales quota, etc. But if it fits the MO, I'm not saying it's right. It's not for me, but does work suck?
I see lots of companies trying to trade different slices of the wheel. Like a lot of nonprofits will be, we pay like crap, but we're going to change the world and we take really good care of each other. Or a lot of consulting firms are just meat grinders. It's like you're going to work ridiculous hours, but you're going to make ridiculous money. And if that's the trade you're willing to make, this is a good place for you. So it's just interesting to me how the more I go around the wheel, the more I see, I can tell you specific companies that are making very deliberate trade-offs of one slice versus the other.
Oh, 1,000%. The problem is when we get ourselves caught that the slice that they're trading is the value. It is we're compensating for that, believing they're going to provide that slice that we really want, or
Right.
vice versa. They promise us that slice and they don't deliver that slice, and then you get into
So I wonder if this reframes the original point we started with, because if work's not important enough, is it just that you don't know which slice is most important to you and you are misaligned with the organization that you're in?
Yes.
If you're a very vision driven person and you want to change the world and you're part of an organization that doesn't give a crap about that, they're just here to make money, you're not going to be happy there, no matter how much they pay you, because it's not what motivates you. Or if you're at a place that is going to change the world and they've got a great vision, but the people are toxic and you hate your coworkers, you're not going to be happy there. And so finding the vision, journey, culture, result that is most important to you and aligning that to your employer and what's most important to them, that might be the best recommendation I could give to somebody whose work is not important enough to them. I would contend or offer that they don't know their motivating pillar and they're not in line with the motivating pillar of the organization.
100% agree. And I think if you go the other side, I think someone that is too entrenched in work, I think they're either compensating for the slice of the wheel, or they're doubling down on one component at the expense of another, and they don't know what that is. And so that's where they got to step back and again go through the same one. Like, what are the pillars? How does this fit? You're shortcutting something because you're spending too much time in one at the expense of the other.
Yeah, and there needs to be balance.
How would you say you find those balance? How do you use the wheel to find this balance for yourself? How can you do that? Let's say that in the scenario of where work is too important for you, how do you find this balance?
I think it starts by understanding which one of those four is most important to you. You need to understand yourself before you're going to be able to understand the organization that you're in or potential employers. So, Ryan, we did this past weekend, right? There's the four motivating pillars of I want to change the world, make the world a better place, which is kind of aligned with vision. Journey was about creating great experiences for people. Culture was around great. What? You go ahead. Sorry, I'm butchering it.
You're guessing. I just get them outright. So if changing the world, if impacting lots of people indirectly is appealing to you, then you're a vision person. You got big vision, big dream. If you like creating experiences, think Disneyland. You love the magic. You love creating those experiences, whether it's a lot of people or a small handful of people. You are a journey person. If you really value one-to-one conversation, you have a close-knit group of friends or individuals you work with, and you love working one-on-one with people to work through their lives, you're a culture person. And if you are a person that likes gathering resources and giving it to others, you don't want to do the work. You don't want to, you're not looking for the glory. You just want to, make a big paycheck and donate it to a charity or empower others with resources. You're a results person. So with taking those four, if you figure out which one of those resonates with you, then figure out which one of those is not for you and see if that's what's driving you in your role, or what's the role at your job is feeding you, I should say.
Yeah.
You could probably say that better than I just did.
So Maria, does that answer your question? Ryan did a much better job than I did.
No, I think it does. But one clarification on, because some people might resonate with multiple of those statements and you feel like, yes, I love the vision, but I also don't really want to do the work. You need to pick the one that resonates with you the most and stick with that and put that as your number one priority, and maybe even slightly, I don't want to say ignore the rest because that might not be a good statement, but focus on this one.
Well, that's a perfect example. There's a lot of those, and people always do this. They go, well, yeah, but I want to get the resources to create the moments and have the one-on-one to change. It's like, we all want to do all of them. And there's a level of, you will do two or three of them at least. But the question is, which one do you value the most? If you had to pick and choose just one, which one is it? Once you pick that pillar, then start analyzing everything from that perspective. So then if you say I'm a vision person and I want to make a big impact, then look in your job. Does your job allow you to make the kind of impact you're looking to do? Well, maybe if you're a salesperson and you're out in the field and you're talking to a lot, or you're a client success person and you're helping, maybe. But if you're literally just in a broom closet in an office and you're talking to 5 people every day and that's it, you're probably not getting much vision fulfillment in your role. Vice versa. If you're the sales guy or you're the success person and you're talking to hundreds of people every single day and you rather be the person stuck in the closet with 5 people and that's all you work with, like, again, you got to find where the balance is for you.
Yeah, I would say maybe one last piece of advice I'd give to individuals who are stuck more on the work sucks is in that trade-off, don't think about a great paycheck versus a terrible paycheck. Think about if everything was average, which one, if everyone was, if all 4 of those pieces were okay, not great, not terrible, they were all okay, which one would I want to invest more time and energy into? And I think that's might be a more helpful way to find the one that's most motivating to you, because we've all been in situations where, money's tight and you're stressed out about it. So it's like, well, I'm not a big resources guy, but I got to pay my bills. That's confusing the issue. If you had enough money, you didn't love your coworkers, you didn't hate them, everything was okay. Which one of those 4 would you gravitate towards? What would you do with your time and energy? And I think that's helpful to then use that as the frame to say, okay, I'm really passionate about X. I need to go find other people and other organizations that have similar passions to me. And that's a situation in which I'm going to be more likely to enjoy my work.
Yeah, 1,000%. So then let's go this route. Manager, leader, you've got direct reports. Okay. They are bought into the company and they are just working themselves to the bone to get to, produce results for the company. What advice can we give the manager or the manager leader, anybody with a direct report? How can we empower them to help those employees still find meaningful value in their work, yet find value outside of work?
Yeah, find balance.
I have a recent example of this happening to me, because I think that also answers the question of how you as a manager can support your people to not be so into work and not make work this pillar, super important thing in your life that you cannot go without. So I had one of my direct reports, because we have weekly one-on-ones and I am in a very good terms. And at this point, I can take out from them and put them in a position where they feel comfortable to share how they really feel about work, about life, or whatever they feel like they want to share. So I had this person come to me and say, I love everything that I'm doing, but I am very stressed out and tired, and I'm gonna need a couple of days to relax. So can I get a vacation or like 2 paid days off in 3 weeks? And I said, no, you cannot do that. You're gonna take a day off tomorrow and the day after. And if you need another one, you're going to do that as well. You're stressed out now, you're burnt out, you need to recharge. And he goes, yes, but there's so much work to do now. Yes, but we're going to take care of it because you're not feeling well. So you need to take care of yourself. And if you take care of yourself, you're going to be able to take care of the rest of the work. So no, you cannot go and take a vacation 3 weeks from now. You're going to do this right now, and you're going to come back recharged. So that's what I would do, or what I did. Actually.
Yeah, which is interesting because you valued the individual. And I'm assuming all the work, nothing got dropped.
Did you notice any drop?
No, I didn't notice at all. Okay, apparently this was within our own company. So no, I did not notice a drop at all in capacity or throughput. And didn't even know this was going on, and because of a good manager taking care of the people. I think if you're that manager, it's like she said, having the conversation one-on-one, but it's finding what motivates them. What keeps you connected to the work? I'm going to assume, and I'm now making a lot of assumptions, but I'm going to assume it was a fear of results. Mm-hmm. They were trying to drive the results, and there was probably a level of journey or culture that they needed. And so by identifying the connection to the results, disconnecting them, she changed the journey. They were trying to focus on the result. The journey they put together was vacation in 3 weeks. Maria changed the journey and said, no, we're going to do it now because I value you as an individual, and we still achieve the vision.
Yeah. One of the other ways that I have helped employees who've worked for me is, yes, understanding which one of those kind of really motivates them, what it is about their job that they really love. But I've used this framework as well on kind of the personal level. So I talk about the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical dimensions of their life. You've got to be careful with that, and you can push too far and not earn the right to ask some of those questions. But I have found in my own life that I need to recharge all four of those batteries, right? The spiritual, am I becoming the person I want to be? Mental, am I thinking about good things? Am I finding ways to challenge myself and grow mentally? Emotionally and relationally, do I have good support? Do I have good relationships? And then physically, am I taking good care of my body? Healthy, productive people have routines that help them recover. And most professionals, especially here in the US, especially executives, have no routine. They have no recovery strategy. They work until they collapse. They collapse in bed. They wake up 2 days later and they go back to work. And it's just not sustainable. Right? And so one of the things I think managers can do for employees that are that work is not important enough, or for work that's too important, is maybe think about that context of, okay, spiritually, who do you want to be when you grow up? Mentally, how are you growing and developing yourself? Emotionally, relationally, who's your support network? Physically, how are you doing taking care of yourself? If we're doing all of those in some ways, then they're going to become a healthy and effective employee. They're going to find their passions and they're going to be better, whether it's here or someplace else, than they were when we first started working together. Yeah. And I think that applies for every manager, for each of us as an individual, leading our own lives at any level of the organization, finding that motivating pillar, and then also thinking about that on the personal level. How am I taking care of myself spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically? That'd be my advice.
I love it. All right, so let's do this. Let's land the plane here. And there's 3 of us, so let's divide this up. I'm going to let you decide. We're going to give some tips for the leaders, the managers, and the employees. Which persona would you like to take?
Manager.
You're going to take the manager. Daniel, do you want the employee or the leader?
I'll take the leader just because I want to make your job harder.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I drew the short straw. All good. All right. So why don't we start from the top down? One tip on the topic for leader Daniel, manager Maria, and I'll take employee.
Most executives don't have a good recovery strategy. You need to find what are the things that help you recharge your batteries, because work is probably too important to you and it is coming at the expense of other parts of your life. So you need a hobby, you need friends that don't work with you, you need to go to the gym. Like there's things that you are not doing because work is too important to you. And thinking about the spiritual, mental, emotional, physical kind of 4 components of life, and making sure that you've got investments that you're making of time, energy, and money in all 4 of those quadrants is going to enable you to have a more healthy perspective on work.
All right. Manager.
So the manager, I would say to try and find a balance between caring for others and caring for yourself, because you cannot care for others and put others first when you're not taking good care of yourself. So putting your work on the first place and putting other people on first place is actually going to do bad to both yourself and the people that you're working with.
All right. Put your oxygen mask on before putting others. Mask on others. So I think for the employee, I think it's just take a PTO day. Don't schedule your time off in 3 weeks, as like the individual said. Take a PTO day tomorrow and just think through what's important to you. If you're working too much, figure out why you like that work, and then figure out how it's preventing you from being successful in the rest of your life, and then map out a balance. And I guarantee you, if you come back to work the next day and have this discussion with your manager, if they're a good manager, they'll help you navigate through it, just like Maria did with the particular individual she was talking about. If they're a bad manager, find a new job. I hate to say it. And I will say, especially for people in America, the job market is wide open. There's plenty of opportunity. Don't settle for mediocrity. Don't settle for being the grunt worker and being fearful. There's too much opportunity out there. So take a PTO day, figure out what you really value, either work with your manager to figure out how to get that in your current role, or find the work that'll be more fulfilling. And I guarantee you, if you know this and you go interview for another job, you will find real quick what you value and what you don't. And it'll either land the job that you'll find a better job, or you'll find how this job is more fulfilling because you know what you want. Or as you're interviewing, you will realize that is just going to be the rinse and repeat job I had before. So take the PTO day, find out what's important, map out a path forward, execute.
Good advice.
Well, thank you for joining on your first podcast, Maria.
Thanks, Maria.
And we look forward to having you on in the future.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that too. Thanks for having me.
Make Work Not Suck, our podcast that talks about exactly that. Our process, vision, journey, culture, and results. We present real-world business solutions that make the difference. Our goal is to make work not suck. Hosted by Ryan Hodges, co-host Daniel Steere. Join us each episode and make work not suck.